Unfortunately, a lot of people think that the goal of a postbac or an SMP is to get to a certain GPA, and that's just not the case. The case is Ask the Dean, episode 41, live from studios throughout the country with Dr. Scott Wright. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am wonderful. Rachel Grubbs, co-founder of Mapped. How are you doing?
I'm excellent.
Wonderful. I'm ready to just jump right in, start answering some questions. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. So first question says, a rough freshman year, graduated with significant upward trend, started a career working 50 hours per week while taking pre-med classes in a post-bacc. First 3 terms, I received C's, labs, and A's in Gen Chem. Rest of my pre-med courses are B or A, including retake of first Gen Chem C-. I got an A. Trend is around 34 credits at 3.23 science GPA, 3.10 cumulative GPA in Mapped. I was told to focus on MCAT and not take more classes. What do you advise? So it sounds like to me that there's some incomplete data here. So 34 credits, what is that trend? Because B's or A's doesn't tell me much. B's or A's could be a 3.2, 34 credit trend.
Yeah.
If it's all B's or all A's with a B, that's a completely different story than all B's with an A.
That's right.
So I don't know if there's enough info here to actually give any advice.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to know. C's, yeah, I mean, it sounds like he or she retook the C's in Gen Chem, got an A, but with the yeah, I agree with you. It's a little too muddled to know what to say without more info. Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I'm adjusting my
Ooh, whoa.
Getting all purpley there. All right. Next question here. I have a question about activities. Do all of our activities have to be extracurricular? I'm a music major and plan on using music as one of my most meaningful activities. However, all of my work in music, including ensembles and leadership positions, is for credit. Can I count this? If so, how would I count hours? And would practicing count? So this is an interesting language one, right? I think...
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the activities technically mentions extracurricular activities or just the activities section.
Right.
I don't know. I always go back to it should be extracurricular, right? But I don't know if that's technically the definition of that section.
Because this comes up with research more often.
Yep.
And does research in my class count? And my advice on that is always no, that's curricular.
Yep.
Now, if you published a paper or, then that would be extra, that would be something to note. But,
Same thing with study abroad. I see it all the time. They're like, I want to put my study abroad on there. Like, those are classes. You just happen to do them somewhere else. It's not like you would put in your activity section, like community college in Ventura, because I went to Maine College in Los Angeles, right? It doesn't make sense to have, like, if you want to put travel as a hobby, and that's what I'm always leaning towards for this is like put music as a hobby and count all the hours and do whatever you want there.
Yeah, I mean, it would surprise me if the student is a music major and all of my work in music, says the question, all of my work in music, including ensembles and leadership position, is for credit. So you're telling me that you're a music major and you don't do anything at all.
I don't practice
outside of class. You don't go jam out with some band or whatever. I mean, that would surprise me, but maybe so. I don't know, but I would say no, it's curricular.
Yeah. Student says, "I like the new background for Dr. Gray." Yeah, it's a different angle of my normal setup. So,
Well, what about my background?
well, I mean,
hello.
It's not new.
Well, okay, that's true. Womp womp.
Jealous.
I am a little jealous.
Mine's not new either. It's just a different angle.
It's just a different angle, yeah.
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 It's just a different angle.
Well, I'll have a different angle next week then.
Let's get back to some pre-med Q&A.
Next question here is, hi, I'm dual enrolled in high school. I dual enrolled in high school and had an awesome experience at a science symposium where my research poster won an award for the best project. I'm really proud of this accomplishment and was wondering if I'd include it in one of my 15 experiences. Or since it was technically done while I was still a high school student, I cannot. It was for a bio class.
It was for bio 1 class.
During high school? Right? Not recommended. I don't think there's any like hard rules, but it's like the agreed upon standard that it's anything after high school.
Yeah, and I would also say I'd be interested to know the research poster won an award if it was a category for high school students or if it was a category for college students.
Yeah.
That the student won the best project. If it's for college students, I might put it on there. I don't know. I don't know. because if you're putting the grades for the classes in, even though you're in high school, the grades go in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was for a bio class that you're taking for college credit, this is a gray area, definitely.
Yeah. It's a double question, right? Because it happened in high school, and we always say anything after high school for extracurriculars.
Right.
But it's also is it an extracurricular because it was for a class that you were taking? So it's that double question in there.
Good point. Yeah, good point. These are tough questions today.
Can you please ask us easier questions that we know the answer to? That's
right.
You're making us look like fools. No, but I think really it highlights the important fact that a lot of this advice is just approved upon standards that everyone, for the most part, agrees upon. Right? Yeah. It's like a handshake deal. Hey, we're going to tell everyone only after high school for the activity section. Okay, got it. We got that. Right? That's good. Like, will a student be marked off and rejected? Like, oh, I see this activity is from high school. Yeah, that's a no-go for our application, right? Nobody's going to look at it like that. They may go, that's weird. I wonder why they did that. And then they'll look at the description and go, okay, I can see it was meaningful. I'll let it pass. I know we typically don't like. Yeah,
I agree with that. And I would say if the student goes ahead and puts it in their activity section as a activity, don't mention. Just say it was. I did the research as a part of my bio 1 class. The research poster won an award for best project. Blah blah blah, and don't say it was my bio class during high school. You know, just.
A lot of students love shooting themselves in the foot with extra details that didn't need to be there.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, and I think so much of it is like the order in which you present things. Like for years during MCAT prep, one of the questions we would ask is what's your cumulative GPA, just to get a sense of the other big stat. And often, not if I was talking to the student, but if I was talking to the student's parent, I would ask mom or dad, okay, so what's the cumulative GPA for college? And the parent would say, well, in high school, she had a 4.6. Yeah. And I was like, whatever your next answer is, I'm already worried you're a helicopter parent. You didn't allow your child a chance to develop her own study skills.
Yeah.
I'm like, just don't lead with that.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
She went to college too far away. I couldn't do her homework for her.
Well, I mean, sometimes helicopter parents have perfectly adult, competent children who are just like, just let me be, I'm fine. So I try not to ever like assign a correlation, but I'm like, you're not leading with the right fact here.
Right. Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
All right, next question. Non-traditional with multiple W's very early in my academic career. What is the best way to communicate to those experiences? Is a good GPA and high MCAT enough to overlook past mistakes? This is this like pre-med assumption out there that W's are this huge black mark on an application. And it's just like, you have some W's. Okay, great. What have you done since? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if you have a whole semester of W's, they're like, what? They're going to think bad. I'm like, no, they're a human being. They're going to think, something happened that semester.
Yeah. Let's find out what it was.
Let's ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do think, however, and I agree with you, Ryan, but I would say that if there are multiple W's that go across many semesters, in other words, if it's clear that because I've seen this before where students sign up for too many classes, and with the intention of dropping a class after they get into the classes and see which ones are the harder ones and which ones are the easier ones or whatever. And they're doing this, semester after semester after semester, there's, a W almost every semester. And I think sometimes an admissions committee will look at that and say that they're either manipulating the system or they're not self-aware enough to understand, whatever. So, but in this case,
patterns are
pattern.
Sketchy.
Yeah. That's
patterns are sketchy. It's like, hey, you took Gen Chem 1, withdrew, Gen Chem 1, A, Gen Chem 2, withdrew, Gen Chem 2, A. It's like you're like testing the waters, getting the syllabus, seeing how it goes, and like doing really poorly, getting withdrawal like probably the latest date you can.
Right.
And starting that next semester kind of with a running start going, okay, I got this. And it's just not the same. So that's the pattern, right? W's just generically aren't bad. What is the pattern behind them?
Right.
That could tell a completely different story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I agree with that.
I withdrew from a music class. I'm sad to say, because I forgot we had a test one day and I completely missed it. And I was like, oops, I'm dropping out of this course because I'm not going to get a good grade.
Oh, so you're talking about every nightmare I've ever had?
Right.
Completely missing the test and showing up to school with no clothes on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that is it. Next question here. What are your thoughts, recommendations if I don't have a connection to a school? Okay. I currently live in Florida, but do not want to continue living in Florida. Smart move. I used to be in the Navy. Shout out to all the other fire controlmen out there. I lived in Chicago, Virginia, Hawaii, San Diego. My hometown is Kansas City, Missouri. I have family and got married in North Carolina. Should I limit applying to those places only? All right. So this is a school list question.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think you have to have a connection somehow to a community or to a state in order to apply to the school in that area or in that state or whatever. I think medical schools are looking all across the gamut at students. And now, granted, if it's a public medical school, then there are going to be likely residency issues that may make it more difficult. But all in all, I think no. I think if you really liked San Diego and you think, wow, going to UCSD would be great, then apply there.
Yeah. Ties. It's interesting, right? For public schools, their kind of charter, their mission is to train students to practice in that state and hopefully stay in that state to treat its population. So just why Texas has a 10% limit on out of state, right?
Right.
Along with the funding of those schools. And so one of the things that I always want to see more data on is for the 10% of students, let's say at Texas, right? Texas is a little bit different, but let's say for the 10% of students who are accepted as out-of-state students, who are they? Are they students who used to live in Texas, or whose parents live in Texas, or whose family lives in Texas and they're there every summer, right? What kind of ties to the state do they potentially have? And I was trying to get some data from Enrique, and I think the biggest tie that he could find was really high MCAT score, which is which is kind of obvious. It's like, I'm going to use my out-of-state people to bolster my stats, so that I have higher rankings on U.S. News and World Reports, right? So there's always some questions out there. I think ties to a state for the public out-of-state schools is definitely something that may give you a leg up, and high stats definitely help for out-of-state.
Correct. Agreed. Yes.
But to be clear, that's part of why our advice is when you're looking out of state, you should be looking at private schools.
Yeah. In general.
And I back off of that advice, or I have backed off of that advice lately, or I've put more context around it.
Okay.
I want students to be informed. And I tell them, as long as you understand, you've done your homework, and you really want to apply, let's say, to University of Washington. It's a public out-of-state school. You're not a resident there. If you do your homework and you see that it's 15% out of state, I don't know what the numbers are for UW off the top of my head, right? If it's 15% out of state, but you know that, but you still want to apply because it's always been your dream to live in Seattle, or you went there once, or whatever it is, maybe you don't have strong ties, but you would love to be at University of Washington, then apply.
Go for it.
I'm very much like informed consent, right?
Yeah.
Terminology here. Where I always get angry, and just at the process in general, are students who don't understand what a public out-of-state school is, or what they do, or who they're looking for, but they just look at stats and like their MCAT and GPA and go, oh, that public out-of-state school matches my stats, or I'm above them, and so I have a good chance of getting in there, without understanding residency kind of complications and how that affects their ability to get in. So I continue to add more context around that language, so that just like be informed when making your list. And if there are schools and you know that it's going to be hard to get into that school as an out-of-state applicant, but you understand that, apply.
Go for it. I absolutely agree.
Well, I know we've been going mostly in order, but if you want to skip down one, that bridges beautifully with the next but one question, the one that starts without an MCAT score.
Let's see. So without an MCAT score, how can we best go about making a balanced school list? I've been using the MSAR, but without the MCAT, not sure how I can be accurate in putting schools on my list. I'm taking the MCAT May 28th. So I'm going to give you my advice. And Scott, you can disagree with me if you'd like. But I don't recommend using stats building a list. I recommend actually doing some work and reading lots of websites, school mission, vision, using the MSAR for other data outside of MCAT and GPA. So the fact that you don't have an MCAT score has nothing to do with your ability to make a list. Ignore the GPA, ignore the MCAT. Figure out who you are and what you want from your life. If you want to be outdoors in a sunny area, right, don't apply to University of Buffalo.
Right.
Right. It's just some common sense thing. So I always talk about location, weather, like temperature, whether or not, whatever.
Support system,
which is based on location. Location includes a lot of things. It includes weather, support system, proximity to other friends and family that maybe aren't technically part of your support system, but moral support maybe. For those few times you have the ability to go out after a test, looking at school curriculum, right? A lot of this is, where are you going to thrive as a student? And if you go to a school just because it happens to fit your MCAT and GPA, but it's a curriculum or teaching style, learning style that just doesn't jive with you, you're going to be miserable. Right. And so looking at curriculum, looking at that kind of stuff is really, really important. And then if you want, look at the 10th percentile for MCAT and GPA and go, where am I on this? But even with that, even if you're below the 10th percentile, 10% of the class is below that. So that you still have a shot of getting into that school. Now, obviously, like, it goes without saying that you have to be a strong enough student to get in anywhere. And so that's where in my mind, MCAT and GPA kind of go out the window because you have to be a good enough student in general to get in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me look at everything else to find out where I'm going to be a good student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, in fact, I think I think the easy way out is just looking at MCAT and GPA on the MSAR and then making it a school list, but based on that, I think that's an easy way out just because it's quicker.
Yeah.
I agree with you that you're spending your time doing your homework to look deeply at the school and what the area and what the school's mission is and what the curriculum looks like and et cetera. That's the first thing you do. Not okay, maybe I'll look at that on a few of these schools after I, decide if I want to apply there or not. So, yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. Hey, why do you want to come to our school? Well, I used the MSAR and it said that my stats were good here.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, man, if your score is like a little lower than you thought it would be, what are you going to say now? I will say, because I this comes up a lot. How do I make my school list without my MCAT score? I know that this comes up a lot from an MCAT prep standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like MCAT preppers, like I, as an MCAT prep advisor, would say, like, well, are you sure you want to apply when you don't have your MCAT back? And so I understand why this is a confusing point. And it's because I'm a hope for the best, prepare for the worst kind of person. So when I'm saying that, I'm not saying your school list is going to drastically change on the number. I'm saying, like, heaven forbid, knock on wood, whatever. What if the alarm doesn't go off, right? Like, what if, these days with COVID, what if there's a new
shutdown?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like, what if you don't have a score at all? Then would that change whether or not you wanted to apply this year? And if you're taking the exam in May, probably not. Probably you're just going to hope to take it in June and keep on trucking. But so I sometimes think about it in those terms, but not in terms of like, was I applying to Harvard and now I'm not? Because just med school applications don't work that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yep. All right, next question here. I hope to apply this cycle and started my post-bacc as a non-trad when COVID began, all online courses, so I haven't been able to get any professor letters of recommendations, but have many from my time on active duty, including a physician. Is this an issue? It may be.
Yep. Yeah, it could be an issue. They want to see from the perspective of the faculty. What do you like as a student? What do you like? How engaged are you? How et cetera. And that could be an issue.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how AdComs, especially for this cycle, because this is the first really big cycle with a year or so of classes that are going to be a lot online, and so students potentially having a lack of letters of rec. We'll see if schools adjust based on that. I don't know. All right, next question. I am a non-trad pre-med, currently working as a mechanical engineer. I had a 3.9 GPA in my engineering undergrad. Holy moly. And need to complete prereqs 2 semesters of biology, OChem, and social sciences, interested in DO. Would it be okay for me to complete these courses through online extension schools, considering my GPA? Do you think schools would accept letters of rec from engineering professors in lieu of science?
I think they're looking for STEM professors, and so I do think that would be workable to have STEM professors, particularly if that's your major. So yeah, I don't think that would be a problem. That's my take on that.
Yeah. And then online courses. That's kind of the standard right now.
Yeah.
Ideally, not online, but with a 3.9 undergraduate GPA, there's not going to be a big question about your academic ability.
No, agreed. Yeah, I agree with that.
Big picture. I got kicked out of my first school due to academics. Since then, I've maintained a 4.0 at my new school, 90 credits. When I graduate, if I keep up a 4.0, I'll have a 2.7 cumulative and a 3.2 science GPA. Should I do a post-bacc, 50 plus credits to get a 3.0, SMP with linkage, or apply straight to medical school? Taking the MCAT next spring and have lots of great clinical experience. They must have really bombed their first year.
Oh, that's exactly what I was thinking.
90 credits at a 4.0,
A 4.0.
but they're still only at a 2.7.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow is right. Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know if you guys saw, but someone else chimed in essentially that they've got the same situation. So you guys should hook up and be friends and like talk about how great you're doing now.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I would say go for it. I think trends. I mean, you got the trends and an admissions committee that really looks at the ins and outs of the application. They're going to see that. And my feeling is that you're going to be talking about this in your application, either in the personal statement or as secondaries or whatever. You're going to be going down this road of talking about the experience and what happened. And so I'd say go for it.
Go for it. Yeah, I want to create like a mind map kind of algorithm flowchart, one of those words, a flowchart, to really show students the possibility. Now, does every school do this? No, but the potential is there to where they can go, okay, as applications come in, does the student have a 3.5 cumulative? No. Do they have a 3.5 science? No. Do they have a 3.0 science? No. Well, shoot. All right. We're losing. Do they have a 5.15 MCAT? No. Okay. That's all right. Is their last 50 credit hours at a 3.5 or 3, so whatever that is? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
Great. Let's put them in the pile of review.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's the potential that schools have this ability to review applications based on a lot of different criteria. They're not going to just look at, and there may be one school that does this, right? But they're not just going to look at 2.7 cumulative GPA rejection.
Right.
Schools have the ability to go, let me look deeper and find out. And then some schools have what they call like the needle in the haystack person of like, let's look at all of the applications of students who we are going to reject and see if we're missing anybody. Really,
yeah. See if there's a diamond in there. Yeah.
Diamond in the rough. Yeah. So there's lots of potential, right? And having 90 credit hours at a 4.0, someone's going to see that. And
agreed.
And that's why I hate this focus on the final number, like, because that's what everyone talks about. If you go to Reddit or Student Doctor Network, nobody ever puts trends in their questions. It's always, I have this GPA.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have time, I go on Reddit. I'll never go on Student Doctor Network, but I go on Reddit and I'll say, I don't know what to tell you because I don't know what the story is behind that number.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Non-traditional pre-med, currently serving in the Army as an orthopedic specialist. What is the best way to communicate that in my personal statement? I have a lot of clinical experience and have participated in field hospital activities as well. Is this considered clinical, shadowing, etc.? I feel like it touches on a lot of different areas of experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, boy. I mean, that's great experience.
Wonderful.
Amazing. And so, I mean, I think there will be a lot of different areas. Certainly in the personal statement, I think would be a very appropriate place to cover some of this stuff. Secondaries, obviously, it may come up, but personal statement, I said, if this is a part of that story that, really is about why you got interested in medicine or why you continue to be interested in medicine or why you're committed to it, et cetera, then you got to talk about it. And that'd be a great place to do it.
1,000%. Yeah, I think the mistake is potentially trying to go, hey, I'm an orthopedic specialist in the Army, which will prepare me to be a physician because of X, Y, and Z, right? It's not necessarily how it's prepared you to be a physician, but why and how is it part of your journey to wanting to be a physician?
Right, exactly.
That's definitely where it belongs. And then 1,000%, it's obviously going to be in your activity section as a job.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Follow up to an earlier question here. 3.23 science GPA with 34 credits. consisting of about 9 A's and 3 B's. Should I focus on the MCAT, as I was told, or take more post-bacc classes? I'm not sure what question that was.
I think that was from our very first one that we said we couldn't answer.
Oh, yeah. 9 A's and 3 B's, 34 credits. If I were to do some quick math on that, what's that probably? It depends on if they're A minuses or not, but let's probably go with they're AAs and not A minuses.
Yeah.
And if they're B pluses, they're just regular Bs, but probably close to let's say 3.5-ish, 36-ish maybe.
Yeah, the original comment says 3.1 cum. So I just don't know what the trend is for those.
Yeah. So the question is, why should you retake more classes or take more classes or focus on the MCAT? Well, I mean, unfortunately, I think that it's not a mutually exclusive issue.
Mm-hmm.
I would say do both. Study for the MCAT and take classes. Now, you maybe not a bunch of classes, but maybe one or two at the same time you're studying for the MCAT. I mean, a lot of students, I would say the majority, and you could chime in on this, Rachel, probably the majority of students that take the MCAT are doing both at the same time, going to class and studying for the MCAT.
Most people who take the MCAT are either going to class and taking the MCAT or working to take the MCAT. I believe from reading the context of the original question asker, yep, she just chimed in, she's working full time. So she's talking about a 50-hour work week and maybe taking more classes, or a 50-hour work week and doing MCAT prep. Or I guess a third option is trying to do all three, which probably won't go great.
No,
So I guess I did some quick math, and it looks like it's probably around a 3.73, 3.74 over the last 34 credits.
Yeah, I'm not going to out this person, but I'm logging into
assuming
their file.
A's and B's and not necessarily A minuses and B pluses.
Yeah, I would probably say focus on the MCAT at least for now, and then see what the MCAT does, and that may lead you in one direction or another to apply or to delay a year and take more classes, whatever. But I'd say focus on the MCAT. That'd be my opinion.
Yeah. Stupid work, stupid bills.
Right?
Being an adult sucks.
Why can't we live in Star Trek world where money doesn't exist?
Yeah. I mean, it's really unfair the way this system rewards people who have, really financial, strong support systems,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. That's right.
Let's see. So separate question. Yeah, there you found it.
This question came up. Clinical experience working with children with autism one-on-one. Is it clinical experience? So this is a super, super common question. This behavioral technician kind of job. I'm assuming potentially that's what this is, if that's working with children, right? Babysitting a kid with autism, probably not working with, but behavioral kind of health technician working on how to redirect and how to potentially adjust to situations and other things, right? If that's what the work is, I call it clinical. Right? It's more of a psychology kind of job, but it's clinical experience in my mind.
Well, to me, it depends a little bit on where this is happening, and maybe that's wrong on my part, but if this is happening in the child's home as opposed to in a clinical,
it usually is. Yeah, behavioral health technicians usually in a home.
Yeah, then I don't know. I would I don't know what I would do with that. I would say, you can do it. You can put it as clinical experience, but then what you would have to do is be prepared in an interview to defend that. If I was your interviewer and I looked at that and I said, okay, I see that you put this as an interview, as a clinical experience. Tell me more about that. Tell me why you think that's clinical experience. And so you would need to be able to talk about it in a way that makes your case. Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting.
And so behavioral health technician, I see a lot of pre-meds doing it. I think it's great because you're working one-on-one with the quote unquote patient.
Right.
Playing games with them, learning how they're reacting to losing and redirecting them and helping them build these kind of skills, life skills to be better people and learn how to adjust and communicate. And so there's a lot to it, right? I think this is 1,000% more clinical experience than what students are doing as a pharmacy technician working at Walgreens.
Right. Agreed. Yes.
Yeah,
agree with that.
It's definitely atypical. It's definitely it's a weird it's a weird kind of niche that I would definitely, as you mentioned, Scott, put it as clinical. And then just be prepared if someone asks, like, what is this? And just talk about it. And very similar to kind of going back to what we were mentioning earlier, students love to shoot themselves in the foot with adding extra details that aren't needed. Like if there are non-clinical-ish things that you're doing as a behavioral health technician, just don't mention those ones.
Right.
And focus on the interaction with the patient as much as possible. The client.
Well, and I also think you can talk about interaction with the patient's family, because in the case of these kids, you're interacting with mom or dad or both, also, and that's a big part of it. I mean, Ryan, you know this better than I do, but the family members, the support network of people that are there in the hospital or in the clinic or whatever, you're dealing with them just as much sometimes as you are dealing with, particularly with minors, as you are with the patient themselves. So
100%. Yeah.
So would you guys say that this is another example too of where someone wants to look into maybe getting multiple types of clinical experience? Like,
agreed.
This seems to cover a lot of like the social part of it, which is so important. But you're not getting that like traditional clinical of being a phemotomist where you're learning how to find the vein.
Yeah. And also you're not witnessing, or I don't think, maybe you are, but I don't think you're witnessing other healthcare workers in the same setting, and seeing what they're doing with the patients and stuff like that. So I agree with you, Rachel, that having a variety of experiences would be good in addition to this one if possible.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely less big picture.
Yeah. Yep.
All righty. Oh wow. It's already getting late. Time flies.
Yeah, we had a lot tonight.
Sun's going down here.
The questions came in thick and fast this time.
Yeah, right. Boom, boom, boom.
We've hit a natural pause point, but this is the first one, 41 minutes in.
That's right. I had a student today. I was doing some interview prep with a student today, and really good student, but non-traditional student who kind of had a little bit of a rocky start, but has done has done a considerable amount of post-bacc work and a special master's program and stuff. And one of his questions was, what are medical schools looking for in an interview? What's the purpose of an interview? What are they looking for? Yeah. And I think that was a really great question. And I said, this is really all about, this is really about several things. One of which is, can you establish rapport with me as an individual? It makes it more difficult being virtual, but the same thing applies. Can you establish rapport to me? And are you articulate? Can you vocalize and communicate to me what you're thinking, and what does your thought process look like? And so I think for students out there who are in the interview process, because there are still schools that are interviewing and still inviting for interviews. So I think consider that as an important part of your interview. Of your interview preparation is getting a smoothness about your responses, and they need to be as natural as possible. If you sound mechanical, you're going to sound mechanical, And if you memorize the answers, which I've seen before, that's going to be a problem.
I'm evil which you already knew, but when I'm doing mock interviews with students and I can like tell that they're kind of just going off of a script, I'll interrupt them on purpose and see how they recover. But yeah, I think
better from you than in real life.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think students most of the time over prepare for interviews.
I agree with that
completely. They're trying to be too perfect. They're trying to come up with the perfect answers that highlight all of the core competencies that the AAC has. And it's just like, just have a conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've seen this with interview prep too, where students, are like, well, my interview's open, so you need to look at my application and memorize it. And I'm like, well, you're paying me money to review it. So if that makes you feel really better, I'm going to take a good look at it. But just because it's an open interview doesn't mean they've actually spent any time looking at your file.
That's right.
Sometimes they're hyper meticulous and they have the time. And sometimes they're like, I know what a good doctor looks like. Let's get in there and meet these folks.
That's right.
So like, you don't want to, we've always said anything in the application is fair play. But you also can't assume that they've seen anything in the application.
That's right. You can't assume that they read it. Even if it's a closed, open file interview, that doesn't mean that they read it. It means that they have access to it. It doesn't mean they read it.
Yep.
And, they may have been on call last night or whatever.
Yeah. I've seen too many students, because it's an open interview, and they assume that the interviewer has read the application. They'll get a question and they'll think in the side of their head going, well, I already answered that in a secondary essay or in my primary application. So I'm going to give a different answer than what is the right answer or the best answer just because I probably already talked about it. Right? Like, don't do that.
No assumptions.
Answer the question.
Yep. Yeah. No assumptions. Or don't be cocky and say, well, as I said in my application.
I hate that.
Not good. Not good.
It's a little passive aggressive.
I would be so tempted to do that. And I wouldn't even mean it as passive aggressive. I would just mean like, well, I'm going to repeat myself now, but it's still true. So I appreciate that tip.
Yep.
All right. We got a couple more.
Good.
When would it be too early to start thinking about med school?
Diapers.
Womb. I don't understand the question.
And the parentheses say letters of rec, thinking of MCAT, making college lists.
I mean, this person is in the MAPS group. I'm assuming they're watching this, so they're thinking about med school. I don't understand the question.
I wish more students started really thinking about it at that level as a freshman, and really thinking about the schedule of things. How does this play out? Thinking about what am I getting out of my classes? This idea of reflection. Making a list of things that are important to me about a medical school that I would want to see, et cetera. I think that's, I wish more freshmen would be thinking about it that way. Certainly, it would be helpful.
Or for our non-traditional friends, 3 to 4 years out.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Rachel. Yeah.
So this was hotly debated last week, but it's come up again.
I saw this one. So if you work as a nurse and interact with patients or physicians, do you still need to shadow? And the results of the poll came in. It was 2/3 yes, 1/3 no. So the yays have it.
So yeah.
Yeah. Scott liked adding in a lot of, but you can't make these assumptions.
Yeah. We could have a whole sidebar about what does it look like when it's a doctor on your committee and what does it look like when it's an education expert on your committee. And you might be getting a good glimpse of the differences between Ryan and Scott.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ryan, I think it's safe to get at least a little bit of shadowing.
A little bit.
To be safe.
A little bit.
Here's a nice comment I'll share. Happy
Oh,
Women's
yes,
Day.
definitely.
I do identify as a woman, but happy Women's Day to everyone.
Yes, definitely. With that, I appreciate whoever did that. This is I think this is Women's History Month, isn't it?
Well, today is International Women's Day.
Right, but I think this is Women's History Month in the U.S. or something like that too. So,
yeah, I shared on my Instagram a technique called amplification that definitely started among women, but is cool for anywhere, which is essentially if there's someone in the room who you think is being underestimated, just repeat what they said and say their name. Mm-hmm. So like, you know what, Scott, I hear you. Even though Ryan and I disagree with you, you feel that if someone's got 5,000 hours of clinical and they were working closely with doctors, they might not need shadowing, right? Like that's an example of amplification. I'm making sure your point was heard.
Yes.
But so anyway, if you guys are interested in that, go check out my Instagram. I think it's such a cool technique. It's just a way of sort of lifting your peers.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, we have another
we got
question.
time for one more.
One more, yeah.
Una más. Is there ever a time you would recommend an SMP after doing a postbac? After 37 postbac units at a 4.0, an advisor told me I might need an SMP because my cumulative GPA is a 3.22. Science GPA is a 3.05. This is where I typically go, your advisor doesn't know a lot.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, if anything, 37 postbac hours, that's a pretty good body of postbac work. I would say, if anything, maybe take a few more classes postbac and then but yeah, exactly. I just don't see the point of a special master's program for that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I was on this rant earlier. I was recording a bunch of Ask Dr. Gray episodes, and I was on a rant earlier. I think I saved probably $100,000 of student loans from students who were going to do a postbac program. And I was like, you don't need a postbac program. Right? At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what is the goal of an SMP? Mm-hmm. The goal of an SMP is to prove that you are academically capable of doing well in medical school. Mm-hmm. With 37 postbac credits out of 4.0, right? And Scott, you always talk about 45 as kind of a good number to get to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have proven to probably the far majority of schools out there that you are academically capable of medical school, right? Yeah. And we're obviously not parsing all of these classes. It could be maybe all of their postbac classes were art classes, right? And hard sciences. So let's assume they're hard sciences.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
37 postbac credits at a 4.0. You've proven already that you are academically capable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people think that the goal of a postbac or an SMP is to get to a certain GPA. And that's just not the case. The case is, are you academically capable right now, right here? And yes, when you struggle early on, your final numbers aren't going to look great. And so I always have to tell students, just stop looking at those numbers because you're never going to be impressed by them.
Right.
But again, going back to how medical schools can parse and divide and just divvy up all of these numbers, they can see that you are now a 4.0 student in your last 37 credit hours. And that is how a lot of schools will look at you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
But a lot of advice out there still built on, your GPA, your number is not good enough. And that's just I can't.
And keep in mind too, that the application services are crafting GPAs in cutting it up in a lot of different ways. The medical schools aren't just getting one GPA or two GPAs. They're getting so many GPA, so they're looking at this GPA in a lot of different ways, one of which is, last 60 hours, last 50 hours, whatever. They're looking at post-bacc GPA, they're looking at a lot of GPA cut-ups. And so, I completely agree with you, Ryan. Don't focus on that one number.
Yeah. Medical schools understand that students have ups and downs. Yep. And I love talking about University of Illinois the director of admissions there. I had her on the podcast a while ago. I think it was episode 288. And she talked about how University of Illinois, they understand that life happens, right? You're a college student, you go through a bad breakup, right? Your first true love dumps you, or you have a death in the family, or something bad happens. They understand that life happens. And so part of University of Illinois' process is they can take your sophomore year. Let's say you started off at a 3.6 and then you went down to like a 2.8 and then you came back up to a 3.5 and finished at a 3.7, right? They can take that 2.0 GPA and throw it in the trash and recalculate your GPA without that year in there. Schools have the ability to do whatever they want and look at stats however they want. And so that final number just isn't a number to look at.
Right. Everybody live, and hopefully a lot of people who are watching the replay. If you go to your dashboard and then do GPA detail, we tried to give you a sample of that, but this is just a few examples of the many variations that Ryan was just talking about. So you can at least look at your cumulative rolling by year, and then I'll scroll down a little. Here's class standing GPA. I'm a big fan of this one, especially when we're talking about trends, right? So in this particular example, someone's undergrad cum is 3.3, not amazing, not horrible, but you can see that they had a rough freshman year and then it just skyrocketed. So that tells a story that says, that is different than a 3.3.
Yeah. And so student just asked, will MAP have a 60-hour or other GPA calculation? We have the ability on the back end for feedback, which we're working on. But yeah, we can definitely have more graphs on this GPA detail page, more tables and graphs, and trying to parse up the information as much as possible.
Yeah, good question. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty. Another Ask the Dean in the books. We're coming up on a year in a few months.